Welcome to the deep dive. You send us sources, we dig through them, pull out the key stuff, the surprising bits, and basically make you instantly well-informed. Consider it your shortcut.
Yeah, exactly. And today, we're diving into a YouTube transcript. It's from the E.N. Calogero Grifasi Investigations English channel. The video is called 80EN, Cristina, C279P1T, Entre External Hypnoperator Iulia Ipati Grifasi Method. Quite a title.
Right. Okay, so what we've got is a session transcript. There's this external hypnoperator, Iulia Ipati, and someone called a support telepath, Cristina. And the key thing seems to be that Cristina doesn't know the topic beforehand. They're exploring mantras, related stuff, under what they call a hypnotic ambient.
So our mission, for this deep dive is to really unpack the perspectives from that session.
Yeah.
What did Cristina perceive about mantras? Their nature, their effects, mental, metaphysical, whatever, and maybe the bigger picture implications, all from her viewpoint in that state.
Okay, got it. So getting into it, the session starts pretty standardly for focus, right? 3 breaths, counting down 5 to 1. What happened right after that? What did Cristina pick up on?
Well, straight after the countdown, the first thing she perceived was a Tibetan singing bowl, copper. And she immediately sort of equated the bowl itself with the body and the sound it made with the frequency of vowels.
Interesting, like a direct physical connection.
Yeah, that seemed to be the feeling. And she noted the Tibetan Buddhist origin, but also recognized similar vowel sounds from her own culture. Mentioned hearing them in churches sound like ram, vam. She actually listed 7 of them.
7 vowels, and she felt these could be combined for different results.
Exactly. The idea came up that mixing these vowels could create different effects. It suggests a belief that these specific sounds have, inherent power, and their combinations carry unique energetic signatures.
Okay, so sound is energy, specific vowel sounds. Where did it go next? How did this connect to the mental body?
So when thinking about mantra recitation, Cristina described her mental body actually expanding, like a disc growing outwards, and its frequency changing.
Expanding.
Yeah. And at the same time, she saw a vision, a meditating monk, also using these vowel sounds or similar ones, and doing hand gestures, mudras.
Huh. So the sound practice and the mental field effect happening together in her perception.
Right. And the monk vision kind of reinforces that traditional link between these sounds and deep meditation practices. It suggests a perceived direct influence.
Intriguing. A growing mental body, a monk. Then things got into mantras and frequencies and this idea of a grid. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this was quite a concept. She saw this grid like a network, right, formed by frequencies. Her perception was that using vowels and words mantras basically allowed her to tune in to specific frequencies on this grid.
Tune in how? Like finding a radio station.
Sort of, yeah. And by tuning in, she could connect with other people who were vibrating on that same frequency. This connection formed the grid, or she called it another layer of the matrix.
Another layer of the matrix.
Wow. Yeah. And she described it as being able to step above it, but still be within it. Almost like it was a blanket overlaying everything.
That's a really vivid image, a blanket. So mantras as tools to connect energetically with others on the same wavelength.
That seems to be the core perception, yeah. It points to this idea of a shared energetic reality. And mantras are like the keys to navigate it, or at least resonate within it.
Okay. Then they talked about specific mantras. I am love came up as the most powerful. What was different about that one?
Well, what's interesting is it's not really a vowel sound like om or vam, right?
Yeah.
But she perceived it as the most potent. Repeating I am love, she felt, created this feeling of becoming the universe itself, being deeply connected with everything.
Becoming the universe.
Yeah. And she really emphasized focusing on the heart, the chest area, while saying it. It suggests the power isn't just the sound, maybe, but the intention, the feeling behind it.
Right, the resonance. And what effects did she link to saying, I am love?
Quite profound ones, it seems. Time kind of dissolved for her. No limits, being everything. A really heightened sense of presence, like being in the flow.
In the flow.
And doing things felt like they were perfectly aligned, with her higher self's intentions. Like it was the shortest path to getting what she truly wanted. And she saw this flow of golden energy with it, too.
Wow. Golden energy, timelessness, shortest path. Sounds incredibly positive. But were there any downsides? Any mantras seen as, dangerous?
It's interesting. She didn't say any were completely dangerous, just partially so. And her reasoning was, well, pretty insightful, actually.
Partially dangerous? How so?
She felt these mantras could force you to confront your shadow self, the parts you don't normally look at, and also your core belief systems. And that confrontation could make those systems crumble.
Okay, I can see how that might feel unsettling.
Exactly. It can be really unsettling if you feel unprepared. Though her perspective was also that deep down, you were always ready. It's just your perception that makes it feel dangerous.
So the danger is more about the disruption to your current reality.
Pretty much. And even these more challenging mantras were still seen as ultimately leading you where you wanted to go, just maybe. Not the most comfortable route. Bit more of a shakeup, you know?
Got it. A shaking path versus a smooth one. So, okay, beyond the immediate feeling, what about longer-term effects? Subliminal stuff.
The main idea there was resonance. Resonance with the universe. She described it like waves of energy coming off the person chanting. And in your personal space, you'd attract more of whatever the mantra is about.
Attracting more.
Yeah. The overall feeling was that mantras help you modulate your life, shape it. They help you become the architect and captain of your own experience.
Architect and captain, I like that. Strong imagery of personal agency. But what if someone doesn't believe? If they're just saying the words, does it still do anything?
That's a really crucial point they discussed. Her perception. Even if you don't consciously believe, repeating the words still attracts energy. But, and this is key, it attracts energy related to your underlying belief, not necessarily the words themselves.
Ah, okay. Can you give an example?
Sure. She said, like, if you keep saying, I have money, but deep down you feel total lack, you're probably just going to attract more lack. The underlying belief is stronger.
Right.
And conversely, repeating, I am love, while feeling totally unworthy. Well, that disbelief is what manifests. Our core beliefs carry a lot of energetic weight, it seems.
So belief is paramount, but can just repeating it, like, rewire that belief over time, even if you start out skeptical.
Yes, that was part of it too. Consistent repetition can rewire the mind. She's the negative example. If someone tells you you're stupid over and over, you might start to believe it. So similarly, repeating affirmations you want to believe can lead to gradual shifts. Maybe just 1 or 2% improvement at first, but hey, that's better than nothing, right? But the real power comes when you combine the words with genuine feeling, with energy, with actually embodying that state of being, truly feeling I am love, for example. And she felt this works for everything: abundance, peace, joy.
Okay, that clarifies the belief aspect. So after these general principles, the discussion got more specific, exploring sounds and chakras. Starting with the first, or sacral, chakra. What came up there?
Right. The sound she perceived for the first chakra was Vamram, which is maybe a bit different from what you sometimes hear.
Vamram. Okay. And the effect?
Physically, she felt a ticklish sensation of vibration, and emotionally a sense of peace and safety. Like the message was, you are safe. Metaphysically, she saw these energy waves aligning with life circumstances, making the ground feel safer, attracting more security. Good for times of change, like a job shift or something.
So a direct link between that sound, the feeling of safety, and attracting safety.
That was the perception, yes. It also brought up archangels Gabriel and Michael, perceived as working with these grounding sounds.
Archangels, how did they fit in?
Well, it then shifted a bit. The idea came up that our beliefs attract entities on similar frequencies.
Right.
So any entity could potentially offer that stability we might be looking for outside ourselves instead of finding it within.
Ah, seeking external validation or security.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And these archangels, Gabriel and Michael, were seen as sort of taking turns and needing more energy, more grounding when someone called on them. It raises questions about where that feeling of safety really comes from, you know?
Definitely. Which kind of leads into this quite detailed, maybe unusual story about a Reiki practitioner. What was going on there?
Yeah, this was a specific vision Cristina had. She saw this Reiki practitioner's office, and the practitioner was using chakra music that involved archangels.
Okay.
But Cristina perceived that while the practitioner felt protected by a kind of fake light from these archangels.
Fake light.
Yeah, that was the term used. While the practitioner felt protected, the actual energy source seemed to be the clients coming for healing, and the practitioner's belief in the archangel's protection. That was perceived as actually being her own inner light, just misattributed externally.
Wow. Okay. Misattributing her own power. And there was more. Something about a contract.
Yes, a perceived pre-life contract between the practitioner and these archangels. And this contract was supposedly linked to a future car accident.
A pre-life contract causing an accident. That's intense. What was the point of that, basically?
Well, the accident wasn't fatal to the subliminal part that was said to leave the body through the back or heart area, but the accident itself was seen as part of this agreement. After the accident, in this perceived narrative, she entered an astral hospital, was put to sleep for what felt like 50 years, woke up more aware, but still not fully connected to her core self, her source, and still trusting these external entities.
A whole astral narrative.
Oh.
Okay. And did that lead somewhere? To the next life?
It did. The perception then included a red dragon entity appearing, about 6 meters long, wise, elder-like, kind of like old Chinese masters.
A red dragon.
Yeah. And a new contract was made, this time with the dragon for the next life. And this contract specifically excluded the archangels. So a shift in the kinds of influences involved.
And what was the deal with the dragon contract? What kind of life followed?
The reward in the next life was riches, lots of women. But this abundance apparently led to a gradual lowering of her frequency,
Yeah.
more negative experiences, potential for alcoholism, and becoming what was termed a humanizer, someone who mixes their energy openly with others, maybe indiscriminately. It's just a planned kind of downturn linked to that contract.
Fascinating. A really intricate metaphysical narrative there. Okay, shifting gears a bit. The origin of mantra-like sounds in churches came up. What was the perception there?
The perceived origin point was China. Cristina connected these sounds to church bells, suggesting they might have originally been used for things like influencing weather.
Influencing weather with bells.
That was the idea. And old cathedrals, like Notre Dame, were seen with their stained glass windows, vitraliums, she called them, working with sounds that vibrated in the ground and also above.
Okay, vibrations in the ground and air. For what purpose?
The ground vibrations were for grounding and energy flow, and the recipient of this energy, Mother Earth, initially seen as a beneficial exchange.
But not anymore.
Right. The
What?
perception is that churches aren't used that way now because information got lost or deleted. Specifically, knowledge a past civilization had about themselves, the universe, their potential, the knowledge that went into building these places.
Deleted information.
Yeah.
Who? When?
She perceived it as an action by some gentleman around 1805. The year wasn't totally clear. It involved changing time, changing information, leading to our current 12-month calendar. Apparently, there was a 13-month calendar before.
A 13-month calendar. And entities involved.
Yeah, 58 individuals from Britain, the U.S., Portugal, France were perceived as involved. The reason? A long-term plan to mix bloodlines and genes after some kind of world division. It's a very specific and alternative view of history.
Very specific, yeah. Okay, let's move on to Ho'oponopono, that 4-part mantra. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. What feelings or effects came up with that?
For Cristina, it evoked sorrow, regret, sadness. For someone practicing it, she saw it as potentially freeing them from ancestral trauma, like an electric feeling of liberation.
Sounds positive.
Yes, but also potentially bringing up guilt and shame right alongside the love and self-acceptance. A mixed bag, maybe.
Okay. Any perceived downsides to Ho'oponopono?
There were a few mentioned. One was that it could potentially anchor you more firmly in 3D reality and lower frequency emotions, especially if your goal isn't just navigating this plane. It might even trap you in those sour feelings, as she put it.
Trapped in the feelings you're trying to release.
Potentially, yeah. And it could also open you up to other energies. Hypnosis was suggested as maybe a less painful way to release trauma by changing vibrations rather than dwelling directly on the emotion. Ho'oponopono was seen as potentially connecting with the low frequencies rather than purely releasing them.
Interesting distinction.
She did say it could be used alchemically, like become aware of the trauma and use it as fuel, but that it wasn't for everyone.
And what about using it for others? Living people or ancestors?
For someone living, say, after a fight, it might bring more awareness to the conflict, almost concentrating those emotions until you reach a state of just observing with no need to forgive anymore.
Observing.
Yeah. For ancestors, if you resonate with their trauma, it could bring their pain up for release. But again, the risk of trapping more information if you don't process it well needs repeated practice, apparently.
Right. Okay, the deep dive also compared prayers across different religions. Let's start with Christianity. What were the perceptions?
A commonality in the original sounds was noted again. In a specific church example, she saw many men making sounds that induced a hypnotic state. This state allowed for energy modulation and collection by archangels and demons.
Archangels and demons together.
Yes, she described the church as their house office. People might feel bliss, seventh chakra activation, but also feel weak like chickens. The feelings are real, but the interpretation that it's God was seen as wrong. They were giving energy to entities.
Giving energy away. How to avoid that then?
Awareness and intention. Being conscious of what you're doing and where your energy is going was seen as the key protection.
Makes sense. What about Islamic prayers?
Noted that men and women pray separately. Women used more hand movements, less overall body movement. Men moved a lot more with their chanting a Double effort, she called it, given joyfully.
And the energy.
Perceived as collecting differently, like in a spiral or vortex. Influenced by lights dividing the space. More dynamic than the Christian example. And the taste of the energy was different, attracting different entities, genies and reptiles, apparently working together, used for different purposes too.
Genies and reptiles. Okay. Any other differences?
Stronger focus on the first chakra for men, dominance, assertiveness, and less perceived shame compared to the Christian focus on inherent sin.
Interesting contrasts. And finally, Buddhism. Chanting and mantras there.
Temples and mountains were sometimes seen as energy collection systems, potentially even like prisons.
Prisons.
That was one perception, but she also saw bridges in the sky. These represented isolated monks who, through chanting, had actually transcended their limiting beliefs, broken free.
Ah, so transcendence is possible within that system.
Seems so. And she saw similar freedom from belief in some non-Arabic women in the Islamic tradition too. And she perceived a mantra for freedom in their language. I am one, I am consciousness, I am everything, I am the universe.
Powerful words. Okay, just a couple more specific things. The greeting namaste. Any perceptions on that?
Yeah, it gave a nice feeling, a connection to a motherly female entity, not Mother Earth, someone else feeling protected, loved.
Sounds positive.
But the benefit depends on belief and intention. It can be good for connection, but it's also seen as a system where contracts with entities could be made. For example, connecting with that female entity might lead to a future life in poverty, though their idea of poverty might be different.
Potential hidden strings attached. What about the brain during prayer? Any physical or energetic observations?
Perceived a lot of active energy in the brain, an electric field. The mental body, very active too. Metaphysically, though, if the prayer connects you to an entity, your own energy might weaken over time. But prayer used metaphysically, internally, could be empowering.
Okay. And very last one, the phrase, God help us or God help me. What happened then?
Saying that was perceived to make a normal-sized entity or this fake light suddenly become huge, like a sun. And your perception shifts entirely onto that huge light. It can overshadow your own inner light. Your light doesn't vanish, but your focus goes completely to the external thing.
That's quite an image.
No.
Okay, we've covered a massive range here. From, tangible things like singing bowls all the way to really complex metaphysical stuff.
Yeah.
Energy grids, entities, contracts, astral experiences.
Absolutely. And running through it all, you see these recurring threads, don't you? The power of intention, the power of belief, the idea that sound and thought are fundamentally energy. This constant interplay between potential empowerment and these, unseen influences in spiritual practices.
Yeah, definitely. And we need to stress again, right, that these are the perceptions reported during this specific session. It's one glimpse, one way of interpreting these phenomena.
Exactly. Which leads to the final thought, really, for you listening. Considering all these perspectives, what resonates with your own experiences or beliefs? What feels familiar? And maybe more importantly, what new questions does this raise for you about the unseen forces, the energies, that might be shaping our reality? It's worth pondering the role of energy, intention, and maybe the power of your own inner light.